If you were the plastic diplodocus, the grey one, yeah? I went home, called him Dino, and basically concocted my entire life around this guy and what he did, right? So this is what I did, this is what I set up, right? Now, so far, so obvious. But what did I create? So most children have imaginary friends. This might stretch to, you know, an extra play setting, you know, at night. I have two children, a 5-year-old boy and an 8-year-old boy. Sometimes they talk about their teddies and what they do. This started off with me devising very, very complicated maps, which I would work on into the dead of night. So lots and lots of maps. A political system, full political system, an honest system. I devised currency. There were a number of other things that I was devising at all times. And of course, what does any planet need that's set up and run with individual plastic dinosaurs, all individually named? It needs a full 4-tiered pyramid, football pyramid system, right? So I also had some non-leagues as well, but I didn't define those as complicated. There was lots and lots of things that happened. Anyway, so, you know, I was dimbling along perfectly happily, 24 hours a day, living in a world of plastic dinosaurs. I didn't think there was anything wrong with this. No one mentioned to me there was anything wrong with this. And then an incident happened. Which I'm sure something's happened in all of your schools. We were asked to write an essay on what we did in our holidays. So everybody said they went to Disneyland, you know, somebody went to Pontins at Minehead or wherever. Now, there were things happening in Enoand. We'll go back to this. So one of the things I devised was a language, a full language and dictionary, verbs and everything for this thing. So it was fairly simple. You'll follow some of this narrative as we go through it. Very, very simple if you want to speak in Enoandese. What you have to do is you have to knock the consonant off the front of every word. However, and of course this was a fictional element in this, right? It wasn't Sanskrit. But you know, you knock the letter off the front of every word. Unless that word happens to begin with a vowel, in which case you begin it with an S. Okay, very, very simple. Okay. So in Enoand or Dino-land, yeah, you following? Right? Okay. Right, everything was fine, but there was a few things going on at the time. There was a massive war going on between some scorpions and some dinosaurs. Anyway, this is what I wrote about, what I did during my holidays. I was fighting on one side of this war, it was all getting very, very complicated. And anyway, I thought this was perfectly normal, nothing particularly wrong. Yeah. So, this thing was handed in to my teachers. Fine, great, cool. Yeah, so there was a parents' evening where they brought my mother from school, and they happened to point out to her that potentially there could have been a bit of a problem with this. They told my mother that they were very, very worried about me because clearly I didn't know the difference between fantasy and reality. I had absolutely no concept of fantasy and reality, which I have to say, as a parent of two children, I might possibly have something to do with that view. And what they said to me, this is where it links into single-axis carelessness, which is, I think most teachers that I've met, most teachers that I speak to, and I've got a number of friends who are in the teaching profession, are amazing and really encouraging. But I think what happens a lot within education systems is they just encourage standardization. And you know, there's clearly nothing wrong with imagination, but in some educational systems there isn't really a place for it. And particularly with standardization and exams and various things. And so what these guys were essentially saying was that there wasn't really room for imagination in what I was doing. They were very worried. Now, at this moment, there was clearly a single act of, there could have been a single act of carelessness leading to, I'm not saying I'm beautiful, but I'm saying childhood imagination is beautiful. So there could have been a loss of beauty at this point. But to my mother's eternal credit, and my mother features quite heavily in this talk. I was going to invite her today actually, but I kind of forgot. I was talking to you about it earlier. To her credit, you know, like we've all got mothers, right? And you know, at times my mother's a massive, massive pain. But really, what I'm eternally grateful to her for, and I never heard about this incident until years later. I was 7 years old. I never heard about this incident until years later. My mother told at school that it's the first time she'd ever heard in her life the words problem and imagination spoken of in the same sentence. She couldn't genuinely understand. She told us to stop wasting her time, came home, And I don't really remember what she did, but I do remember she bought me a lot of plastic dinosaurs. She massively encouraged this in me. She thought it was absolutely brilliant. I remember her sitting me down and asking me about and asking me about all the things we did, asking me to talk through the language, asking me to talk through the maps and everything that I'd done. Now, okay, but there's a practical side to all this. I don't know how many of you saw Temple Grandin's TED Talk last year. I was lucky enough to see it in the room in Long Beach. And what she talked about, she was talking about the context of autism, and she was talking about like, if you've got a child who doesn't like maths, but he loves racing cars, teaching racing cars through maths, it doesn't seem that difficult to me as a concept, but it seems quite hard within the education system as it exists at the moment. And I think as technology advances and we're able to individualise curriculum, I think this is really good. I think what we'll be able to do is to tailor education to children's interests. Now, this was about racing cars, but let me tell you some of the things. So, one of our main clients, Wieden Kennedy, is Honda. We did all of their most famous television adverts we've worked on. And Sushiro Honda was an absolute genius. And how he described engineering was imagination made real and useful. And I think that's precisely what I think Temple Grandin was going on about. Let's just take the imagination that children have got and the brilliant creativity that children have got and just somehow make it real. So I'll talk about some of the things. So I ended up coming top of the year in geography. Right? This isn't my CV, by the way. I'm not going to start the CV. But I got our school geography prize, and I like to think it's because basically I sat awake all night drawing maps. I was obsessed. I used to go to bed reading atlases because I was so obsessed with countries and recreating them and what and what was going to happen with all that. I was obsessed with current affairs. Right? Because what I would do is I'd go and look at what wars were going on, and I would go and have a look at all the various things. Then I'd want to recreate the land with dinosaurs across the lounge and across the lawn and various things. So of course most of my mates didn't have a clue. I was one of the few 8-year-olds who was able to accurately spell Brezhnev. When he died. What else did it teach me? I was rubbish at maths, right? Rubbish, still am. But what did this teach me? Well, one thing that I knew was 256 minus 128 into 64 into 32 into 16 into 8 into 4 into 2 into 1, because that's precisely how you do an FA Cup draw, right? That's what I did. That's how I did this thing, and this is what it taught me. So I was very, very interested when Philip Early was talking about imagination and its application within the prison education system, because he talks about that word self-esteem. And I think one of the key things in children is to encourage self-esteem. And I'll tell you some of the less practical applications of growing up in a planet that you run yourself. Right, well, I was the star striker in the best football team on the planet, right? I won every cup, I got the golden boot. I included my mother in a lot of this, by the way. He was always the guest of honour at the cup final, got to shake all the hands and hand out the medals. On our wedding day, I decided, why should I be left out? So I married Nina and the Norwegian princess. Why Norwegian? I've absolutely no idea. But I married a Norwegian princess on the day of the royal wedding. I basically ran the world, right? You're talking about self-esteem. This is absolutely brilliant. I was the emperor. I co-ran it with Dino, to be brutally honest. So, what's the point of all this? I think, Einstein, I'm not Einstein. But the great thing with Einstein is, this is someone who's taken to be one of the smartest people in the whole world. What if you say imagination is more important than knowledge? Of course it is. It's where everything starts. Every brilliant idea starts with imagination. And Ken Robinson, who still is given, as far as I'm concerned, the standout TED Talk of all time, which was How Schools Kill Creativity. Where he talks a lot about encouraging creativity. And I think one of the most amazing things there is the flip of that, which is not discouraging it. Imagine how many ideas have been snuffed out. Imagine how many children have wanted to do brilliant things and just forgotten them, and just decided to be discouraged because of one of those single acts of carelessness, where really someone should have just bought them a bucket of plastic dinosaurs and told them to go and get on with it. And I think people always think children are really resilient. When they always talk about children being really resilient, they're actually not that resilient. And as a parent who watches them, I can see how quickly they can get discouraged by something. They're actually incredibly fragile. And so what we really need to do is, encourage, I think, more Enoanders in the world. And so, these are my two children, by the way. I think finally, all I really want to leave you with is the thought that we should encourage the odd and absolutely celebrate the ever quite so weird. Because, I don't know about you, but I'll tell you one thing, right? Inoan was an absolutely brilliant place to grow up. I wish you could have been there with me. Thank you.